Hello. Today we'll be discussing Arthshastra Part 11, that is the chapter on defense and war, Kautilya's military strategy and state security doctrine. Kautilya's Arthshastra, an ancient treatise on the statecraft, economics, military strategy, presents a comprehensive and pragmatic system for governance and warfare. For a king, the army is an essential instrument for fulfilling his dual responsibilities: the internal duty of the Raksha, protection from the external aggression, and the external duty of territorial enlargement through conquest. Kautilya's philosophy on war is nuanced and extends beyond mere physical confrontation. He outlines four distinct types of war, establishing a spectrum of conflict: Mantra Yuddha, the exercise of diplomacy and strategic reasoning employed when a king is in a weaker position and open battle is unwise. Praksha Yuddha, open warfare, a conventional set piece battle where the time and place are specified beforehand, aligning with the principle of dharma. Kuta Yuddha, the concealed warfare. This involves psychological warfare, including instigating treachery, sowing dissension, and demoralizing the enemy camp. Guda Yuddha, that is the clandestine war, the use of covert methods to achieve objectives without waging a formal battle, typically through assassination of enemy, using a network of agents or double agents, allies, or the corrupted supporters. This qualification reveals a sophisticated understanding of the conflict, where overt military power is just one tool among many, and ploy, espionage, diplomacy are a king's duty of defense is a constant preoccupation, encompassing both physical protection and the prevention of internal treachery, revolt, and rebellion. Physical defensive measures include a system of frontier posts to control the entry of undesirable elements, and a network of four types of forts: mountains, rivers, jungle, and deserts, strategically placed throughout the country to provide layered security. Maintaining control over army is paramount. Kautilya prescribes multiple methods to ensure loyalty and prevent sedition. Financial incentives: army chiefs are paid handsomely to resist enemy bribes and to afford paying their own men well, ensuring contentment. Testing integrity: the loyalty and courage of commanders are rigorously tested to weed out the cowardly and disloyal. Constant surveillance: clandestine agents keep a close watch on military leaders to ensure they do not succumb to the enemy instigation. Division of command: each of the four wings of the army, that is, the elephant, chariots, horses, and infantry, is placed under multiple chiefs, fostering mutual suspicion and ensuring mutual accountability and loyalty. Managing suspects: those suspected of treachery are posted to remote areas while their families are held in the capital as hostages. In extreme cases, they are secretly eliminated. Troops are classified into several types, reflecting a tiered system of reliability. Maula, or the standing army, natives of the country constantly trained and sharing the king's interest. They are the most reliable. Britta, the territorial army, raised from natives for a specific campaign, obedient and easily mobilized. Sreni, they are the organized militia. They are the native militias acting as a group with interests aligned with the king. Mitra, friendly troops. forces of an ally or those hired under a treaty. Amitra, alien forces, troops fighting alongside the king for their own reasons. They are unreliable. A Tavika is a tribal forces commanded by their own tribal chiefs and also unreliable, with plunder as their primary objectives. The classical Indian military pattern is confirmed with its four wings operating in an integrated manner. In battle, a warrior on the horseback was supported by 6 foot soldiers, while elephants and chariots were supported by 5 horse units. The infantry was diverse, comprising of archers, soldiers equipped with the hand-to-hand combat with swords, spears, and lances. Kautilya advises that it is always preferable to mobilize a force earlier in this list, that is the topmost, Mohla Bhartiya, the one later, as reliability and shattered interest decreased down the hierarchy. Organization structure is clearly defined, headed by a commander-in-chief, that is the Senapati, with chiefs for each of the four wings and a chief of ordnance as subordinates. Below them are the division commanders, that is Nayakas, each commanding 10th battalion commander, that is the Senapatis, who in turn command 10 company commanders, that is Patikas. This structure ensures clear lines of command, responsibility for mobilization, payment, and discipline, with each division using distinct trumpet, flag, and banners for signaling. Kautilya provides a detailed analysis of what constitutes an ideal army and numerous disasters that can cripple its effectiveness. An ideal army is one that is well paid, honored, kept at full strength, free from traitors and internal dissension, and kept together rather than scattered. It should never be abandoned, left leaderless, or entirely merged into an allies force. The text meticulously lists and provides remedies for the various army calamities. An unhonored or unpaid army will not fight effectively. The remedy is immediate payment and honors. An exhausted or sick army rests on refreshments. A depleted army needs reinforcements. An army on unsuitable terrain or season cannot fight effectively, must be provided with suitable equipment or move to favorable ground. A dependent, disunited, and angry army requires conciliation, fulfillment of hopes, and a resolution of internal strife. An obstructed or encircled army must find an alternative direction of attack or break this encirclement. An army cut off from supplies or reinforcements must secure local resources or be relieved. So, the general remedies for all calamities include removing vices and defects, reinforcing with fresh troops, entrenching in a strong defensive position, and securing allies to attack the enemy from the rear. Each wing of the army had specialized function and was tailored to the tactical situation and the nature of the opposing force. Chariots, used for protecting the army, repelling attacks, capturing positions, breaking enemy ranks, reuniting friendly ranks, causing terror, and creating an awesome noise. They require level, firm, and clear ground or terrain. Elephants, Gaja. Considered crucial for victory, elephants are the tanks of the ancient battlefield. They were used to crush enemy infantry, fortifications, and encampments, march in front, clear paths, protect flanks, cross difficult terrain, start or extinguish fires, and trample the enemy. They were best used after the hot season or in the well watered areas. Horses. The mobile arm used for reconnaissance, securing favorable grounds, destroying enemy supplies, maintaining discipline, extending the range of the raids, protecting flanks, making initial attacks, penetrating enemy lines, and pursuing broken armies. They required terrain with small stones and trees free from mud and bogs. Infantry, the backbone of the army, capable of fighting in all places and seasons. They are they are versatile and essential for holding ground and engaging in all front forms of combat. Labor accompanied the army to set up camps, maintain roads and wells, carry equipment and provisions, and remove the wounded from the battlefield. The document specifies distinct tactical modes for each wing. Horses and elephants used for rushing forward, flanking and circling, zigzag maneuvers, feigning retreat, protecting the broken ranks, and pursuing a routed enemy. And elephants were additionally used for trampling the enemy center and making surprise attacks. Chariots used similarly to the elephants but were limited to suitable land and could fight while stationary or moving. Infantry employed for all-out attack at all times and for silent and surprise assaults. Training was a daily ritual conducted outside the city at sunrise. The king was expected to take a personal interest in the inspections. Control was maintained through a network of secret agents, prostitutes, artisans, and entertainers who diligently watched over the soldiers' honesty and loyalty. The choice of the battlefield was a science in itself. The ground had to be suitable for the type of forces deployed. Infantry effective in deserts, forests, in trenches, and waterlogged areas. Chariots required level, firm, and obstruction-free ground. Elephants needed terrain they could traverse, even if hilly or watery, with uprootable trees. Horses preferred ground with small stones and fissures they could jump over. The army was to be arrayed in a favorable position, not facing the south, and with sun and wind at its back. The base camp was a fortified semi-permanent establishment near the war zone. Its layout mirrored the capital with concentric rings of security. King's quarters, treasury, and communication center were in the innermost rings, surrounded by progressively less important officials and less trustworthy troops. Strict discipline was enforced. Guards were posted and rotated. Disputes and gambling were prohibited, and a pass system controlled movement. The march from the base camp to the battlefield was meticulously planned. Considerations included rate of march. Slow was 15 kilometers per day, middling at 22.5 kilometers a day, and the best speed was 30 kilometers a day. The availability of supplies from the village en route and the choice of most suitable path. The order of march placed the commander in front, the king and the women in the middle, with the horses and bodyguards on the flanks and the elephants on the rear. The march array could take various forms: crocodile, cart, thunderbolt, uniformly circular, or a single file needle formation, depending on the threat and the terrain. The army was protected from a long list of hardships, including hunger, thirst, difficult routes, enemy harassment, and disease. In accordance with the Dharma, an open battle, Praksha Yuddha, required specifying the time and place beforehand. This was preferred method only when king's army was superior, instigations in the enemy camp had been successful, all precautions were taken, and the terrain was suitable. When these conditions were not met, deceptive battle tactics were employed. The Kautilya gives out a number of deceptive methods. Attacking the enemy when he is suffering from calamity, is unprotected, or on unsuitable terrain. Luring the enemy onto bad ground by feigning a rout. Using part of the force for a frontal attack and striking the flank or rear with the main force. Using unreliable troops to tire the enemy before attacking with fresh, reliable forces. Feigning defeat to draw the enemy into an ambush. Attacking a negligent enemy while he is plundering or celebrating. Keeping the enemy awake with the night forays and attacking during the day while they were drowsy. Using frightened cattle with noise-making contraptions to break enemies' ranks. Attacking any force that has to fight facing the sun or wind. Ambushes were the best set in desert, forests, narrow paths, marshes, mountains, and under the cover of the mist and night. Before battle, troops were exhorted and motivated. The king would address them, emphasizing shared service and the promise of shared wealth. Counselors and priests would highlight the army's qualities, while astrologers would proclaim the king's divine favor and foresight. The night before, the king would observe rituals, making oblations, and sleep beside his weapons. On the day of the battle, the bravest and the most loyal troops were placed in the center with the king among them, stripped of the distinguishing features and often impersonated by a double at the head of the formation. Bards praised the brave and damned the cowards. The rear was occupied by the physicians with the medical supplies and women with the food and drink to encourage the men. Kautilya provides an exhaustive description of battle array and formations. The basic building block was a unit, with arrays formed from the multiple units. These arrays were then combined into larger formations, typically with a center, two flanks, and two wings. Formations could be pure or mixed. Pure means the comprising of one type of force, or mixed. The modes of attack for these formations were varied. The truncheon or danda, a frontal advance with all arrays in line. The snake, boga, a sinuous and sequential advance. Circle or mandala, an advance in all directions simultaneously. The dispersed independent advances by different arrays. Specific orders for four constituents were also prescribed. During the attack, the conqueror was to ensure he had reinforcements in reserve. He was to attack with part of his force and keep the rest in reserve. The best troops were used to attack weak enemy units, and reinforcements were directed to the areas of danger. The principle of using a superior constituent to attack an inferior one was the key. For example, infantry attacked by the horses, horses by the chariots. After routing the enemy, conquerors' actions were dictated by pragmatism. Sue for peace if the enemy was more powerful, agree to peace if sought by an equal, destroy an inferior enemy unless he had reached his own territory or was ready to die fighting. A rout army was not to be harassed further. When an enemy took refuge in a fort, a siege became necessary. Kautilya considered sieges costly in men, money, and time. They made the king vulnerable to internal rebellion. Therefore, the goal was to capture the fort quickly and cheaply through a graduated approach. This approach included the psychological warfare, that is, like frightening the fort's inhabitants and subverting enemy officials, enticing the enemy out, using the clandestine method to draw the enemy out and kill him, weakening the enemy, using trusted subordinates to infiltrate the enemy's confidence and then betray him, and sowing dissension among his supporters, infiltration, sneaking forces inside the fort to capture it from within, direct assault, laying the siege, and storming the fort was the last resort. Even then, the civilian population was to be treated as the future subjects, not enemies. The conqueror was to use the four methods of statecraft: conciliation, gift, dissension, and force to induce surrender before assaulting. Setting fire to the fort was discouraged, as there was little to gain from conquering the ashes. The right time to storm the fort was when the enemy was ill, celebrating, or tired, or asleep, or when the weather provided cover. The assault was often led by unreliable or tribal forces as a first wave, followed by the main army. After capture, the fort was to be cleared of enemy supporters and stringent security measures were taken. The ultimate goal of war was not just conquest but stable and prosperous rule. Kautilya outlines three scenarios for acquired territories. Inherited territory: emulate the father's virtue, avoid his mistakes, and continue to introduce only dharma compliant customs. Reacquired territory: strengthen the qualities that led to its recovery and avoid the mistake that caused its loss. Newly acquired territory: this required a careful and conciliatory policy, the details of which is given in the subsequent slide. Substitute enemy's vices with virtues and double his virtues. Grant favors like the tax exemption, gifts, and honors. Reward those who betrayed the enemy for the conqueror. Adopt the local dress, language, and customs. Honor the local chiefs, castes, and guilds. Support temples and religious institutions. Release prisoners and help the distressed. Remove thieves and disband harmful practices. Replace the enemy's officials with the conqueror's trusted men or those disfavored by the previous ruler. The document concludes by posing a critical question: is Kautilya relevant today? The answer provided is resounding yes. As long as fundamental nature of human beings and the states remain unchanged, characterized by the distrust between the nations and the relentless pursuit of self-interest, the strategic principles laid out in the Arthshastra remains profoundly relevant. Its insight into the spectrum of conflict, from the diplomacy to the clandestine war, the importance of intelligence, the management of military forces, the psychology of the leadership, and the ethical and pragmatic administration of the conquered land offer timeless lessons in the statecraft and strategy. With this, we have come to the end of this session. The script of this session is available on Delta Tech. The link will be given in the comments. Thank you.